This episode of the Media Frenzy podcast is brought to you by Columbia State Community College, Middle Tennessee's first choice for secondary education. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Media Frenzy podcast. My name is Hallie.
I'm Chloe.
And I'm Caitlin.
We have a special guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Colleen McCready. I'm an assistant professor of English here at Columbia State.
Very cool. That's very exciting. So we're still in TV month, but we're gonna just kind of ask some questions starting there, and we'll probably go a little off the rails just because, we have a fun guest. So just to start off, would you say you watch like TV shows or no? Or is that not really your thing?
No, I do. I watch some.
Well, do you have a favorite?
I tend to binge watch things. So I'll watch a lot of something and then I'll move on to something else. Though I will say probably the two things I watch regularly are Survivor and Married at First Sight.
Oh, some good reality content.
Yeah, that's because, my daughter and I sit there and talk about the people. So.
Okay, that's cool. Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that from you. So, would you say that in general you prefer like live action content to like something like animation?
Well, yeah, I'm not big into the animation stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. So this is sort of like I was curious about just in some of our past conversations, you seem to have like different tastes for specific things. So when it comes to like TV, you seem to like reality content, but with like movies and books, is there like a genre that you enjoy the most?
Okay, so for TV, it's not just reality I like, though.
Okay.
I mean, and I like pretty much anything. That's, I can get caught up in a lot of different things. Books and movies, it's all over the place too. Like for books, I read a lot of psychological thrillers, mysteries, but then I also read fantasy and some romance. So, and then for movies, I love like action movies. Though I like fantasy stuff too. So I'm all over the place.
I love that. We're also kind of all over in all of our conversations. It kind of we all kind of are spread out pretty far. We had with our digital media teacher, Mr. Herford. He was on one of our episodes, and he had a pitch for a show. What was the plot of his show where he was like a TV?
He was like a PR practitioner, and he had this roommate, and they had hijinks together or something.
Like a sitcom.
Yes. And it was very he was like the best in his business, and his friend, I don't remember if we determined if he was a sidekick or not. I think he said he would like figure it out on the way, but it was definitely that they were two business people and their roommates, and they just get into some wacky hijinks.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, we were excited.
It was entertaining.
Whenever he gets around to that, we're gonna watch it. So you're an author.
I am.
Would you like to tell us about some of your books?
So I have written romantic suspense books and women's fiction under Emily Reed, and then I write crime thrillers under E.L. Reed. So the crime thrillers are based off female serial killers. So they're real female serial killers that have been reincarnated into contemporary times.
Oh, wow.
That's really cool.
So that's an interesting concept.
So do you mean... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just curious, do you mean like reincarnated as in you bring them back in like a mystical way, or like...
So we have somebody they're always a female, doing the killing, and they're having these memories that are not really their memories. And then they're killing in the same way that the actual killer was killing. So the killers I typically are pulling. The first one was based off Lizzie Borden. The second one was based off Lavinia Fisher. And then the third one comes out this summer, and it's based off Nanny Doss.
Oh, okay.
How much research
So,
do you do for these?
so much research. Like I can lose weeks of my life just kind of diving into research because I get caught up in it, and it will take me off on tangents. Like when I first started researching, I came up with like 18 female killers that I was going to base books on. I probably am not going to write all 18 of them, but yeah, I can lose time because it's not just researching the killer, and you're also researching the method and the way they kill. So like the first one, of course, she was killing with a hatchet. So I had to research, how does the blood splatter go? Where's the best place to hit somebody with the hatchet? And, there's just a lot to do it. And then you got the whole police procedure stuff that you have to research. So
Yeah.
How long would
I
you
feel
say
like
it takes to write one of those?
okay, if I sit down and do my writing like I should, I have written a full rough draft in 3 to 4 weeks. Now, I also teach full time. So most of them I can do in 3 to 4 months. For some reason, book three's taken me a little longer. But I have found this as I'm writing, there's stuff that comes up that I have to go back to research. So it's just kind of taking me longer to get through it. But
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Do you like to absorb content like the books you write? Like, would you say you read a lot of books in the genre of what you write?
yeah, I do.
Do you have like a favorite author other than yourself?
Well, old time author, Agatha Christie.
Mm.
Absolutely. But lately I've been reading a lot of Harlan Coben. So like on Netflix, he wrote The Stranger. So that's
Oh yeah.
like it's like 8 episodes or something series. Though the Netflix series is nothing like the book. But I've read quite a few of his, and he's going to be in Nashville in 2024, and I'm going to go to that conference that he's going to be at.
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
That actually makes me think of, so as you're an author, how would you feel if someone came to you and wanted to adapt your book into a TV show? Like, what would your
Would be
response be?
all for it.
Now,
Absolutely. That would be fun.
like, how would you feel though? Because I do know that with most book to whatever adaptations, it's really hard to get it like right. So would you want creative control over it still, or would you just be like, have fun?
I think I'd want a little bit of creative input, not so much control, but some input. I really hate it. Like with Harlan's books, like The Stranger, there were things in the episodes that were happening that never took place in the books. And it took place in the book in New Jersey, and in the TV show, it is in the UK. So it was really weird how it was so vastly different. I think if somebody was going to turn my books into a show or a movie, I'd want some input to keep it fairly similar. But there's also things when you write a novel that just don't translate to the screen. So have to change. But yeah, I'd be all for it.
What perspective do you write in? Because I haven't gotten to your book, your first
That's a
one.
good
What?
question.
You
Yeah.
haven't?
It's in my Amazon.
Wow.
So
What a bad student.
I know, I'm
I
horrible.
know, right? And she's had me for how many semesters now?
Ooh.
Um, I do my books a little different. So the crime thrillers are written in third person through the eyes of the detective and medical examiner, except for the killing scenes. Those are written in first person through the eyes of the killer.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, cool. Because that's what I was gonna say. You were like sometimes like things don't translate well. Like I find a lot of times, like movie and TV adaptations of books sometimes lose a little bit of the depth that people don't like it as much. And I think part of it is because you have the internal dialogue sort of kind of going. You're getting to see from the character's perspective, whereas when you watch a show, it's totally outside. You have to express everything through the actor. So I can understand
Right.
how it can be really difficult to create like a screenplay that makes sense regarding.
It is. And when you're writing in first person, it's a lot limited because you're only seeing what that person does. At least in third person, you're seeing more. But for the for this particular series, because you don't want to give away who the killer is, you kind of have to do it in first person. That way you can still see that they're having these memories that are not theirs and kind of get that what they're going through, which just it sounds really creepy. It is kind of creepy. I can't write killing scenes at night because I give myself nightmares, because you have to really get in their mindset.
Do you guys podcast members do you have any books that have like freaked you out, or shows that have freaked you out, or movies?
Coraline. I think we've talked about this before.
Oh yeah.
To this day, it still freaks me out.
Just like the vibe of it?
Well, I have an unrelated fear of dolls anyway, so like it
So
didn't
you don't
help.
watch Chucky then?
No, I don't do dolls, but it's just everything about Coraline where it's just like just the second they're like, "Oh, you want to put buttons on your head?" It's like, "No."
Yeah, there's something about the idea of having something sewn into your eyeball that is a little unpleasant.
A little bit.
I can see that. I read a book one time. It ended up being they did a movie adaptation of it on Netflix. What the heck was that book even called? Oh, There's Someone Inside Your House. The movie
No.
I don't recommend the movie. It's not worth your time. But it is sort of that thing where it follows like this one girl. I would compare the plot line to like the movie Scream, like the original Scream.
Okay.
But every once in a while there's like a chapter from a different kid from the school's like perspective. And like, oh, this kid's not gonna last the rest of this chapter because they're not relevant. But it's sort of in that similar way where it's like that you're waiting for this death scene. So when you are writing, is it like something where you're like, I can't wait to get to the scene where I get to write this, or is it like, oh man, I gotta write another one of these?
Me?
Yeah.
I think it's a frame of mind. So there are some days, this sounds terrible, but there are some days, if I'm just having like a bad day, it's a good day to write killing scenes, because you just kind of get that frustration out. You can just kill people off. But then there are other days that it's harder to get in that mind frame, So I don't know if there's so much of, I can't wait to see this person go down. But there are definitely sometimes students write bad papers and I just go home and start killing them off.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
oh no. We had a class one time, it was for mythology, right? Where somebody did your book for their presentation.
Yes. But here's the thing. If you wanted to use my book for a presentation, have the details correct.
Oof. That's a bold
Whoa.
move.
Yeah, it was
That's a really bold move on their part.
Apparently it didn't work out because
Did not work out for them.
That you saying about like writing killing scenes and stuff, it does make me wonder. So, are there any characters that you write specifically because you're like, oh, these people are just like so bad and you have to wait to kill them? Or are there people that like, I don't know, you write and you're like, oh, I knew I was gonna kill you, but I fell in love with you, or so you were just or something. Like, do you get attached to your characters, or you just like you're Slaughterhouse, like you're Cannon Fodder buddy?
I get attached to the characters that aren't dying.
Okay.
Because typically if I'm picking out victims, they don't have a huge part in the book. So you're not going to get super attached to them. But in book 3 that's coming out this summer, I'll just say that there is a character who has been in the background of all 3 books, in the first 2, and now she's kind of in the forefront in this book. And I really like her, but I don't know if she's going to die. Um, but let's just say her life is going to go through hell. And I feel a little bad about that, but it's kind of necessary.
Okay.
It's like I feel like even with my students, I torture them in class and I feel a little bad, but not that bad. Hallie knows what I'm talking about.
You're not that bad. She did make us write poems and read them out to the class one time.
Oh
That
no.
was
Oh, that is
Oh.
torture. Yeah.
That is actual torture though.
so bad. Bad.
Wait, did you tell them?
That wasn't near as bad as talking about Phantom of the Opera.
I didn't like that book.
I would just have to ask though, this is how we can determine like what level of bad it is. Did you tell them beforehand that the poems were going to be read, or did you spring it on them after the poems were written that, hey, we're going to read them now? Because this
Don't say
determines the
anything,
level.
Hallie.
Okay.
So here's what I did. We were talking about poetry, and I show clips from Dead Poet Society.
Oh no.
So there is a scene in Dead Poet Society where he makes one of the students get up in front of the class and do a thing. And my question to the students was, do you think that's wrong for a teacher to do that? And they all said, no, that's a good teacher. So then I'm like, great, write a poem and you're going to read it out loud. So they can't really say no because they agree that that's a great thing to do.
Hey, I did not say it was great. I just said, it depends on the kid.
Oh, well, I made you do it anyway.
You did. It was fine. I wrote a haiku because it was easy. What is like when you write, what is like the hardest thing for you? Like, what's your biggest struggle, would you say, when it comes to writing? Or is it just like pushing yourself to like sometimes you're in the slog and you're like, I gotta get through?
So sometimes I'm in a slog. This spring has been really hard for me to write. I had COVID and it's just been like massive brain fog. So it's hard to sit down and try and push through that. But in general, when I'm writing, the beginning of the book is always the hardest for me. In Spikes, I rewrote the beginning 6 times because I just was not happy with it. But it's always like once I can get past that beginning, I'm good. But that beginning is so important, because that makes or breaks whether a reader actually continues to read or not. And some of that's just me being a perfectionist and
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah. The perfectionist thing gets a lot of people. You get stuck in that loop of like, I could do better than this. And then will you ever do better? Or are you going to be doing that for the rest of your life?
You could edit to death because there's always something I feel like I could change. And I have to get to the point where I'm just like, nope, I'm just sending this to my editor and letting it go.
That's fair. That's fair. I did have some, like another family friend that he wrote like a book about like child psychology, and he'd been working on it for like a long time. But when he got an editor, he was like, editors are amazing. Like my work is like, it looks so good and professional. Is that how you feel like when you send it off to your editor and get it back?
It's true. I think so. I'm my worst critic. So I'll always send it to the editor and go, this is just pure crap. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I mean, she always comes back with, no, it's not. I don't know why you say that. But it definitely, yeah, she definitely helps polish it up to look good.
Like, man, I wrote that. When it's done. When you're a teacher, would you do you really enjoy teaching, or would you prefer to like be writing full time?
It's a hard question because I would want to write full time. Like that has always been the goal, to write full time. But I really enjoy teaching too. So I don't think I would ever completely give up teaching. If I could write full time, I probably would still teach a couple of classes a semester.
Your classes are great. Like,
oh, thanks.
I think so, at least.
Well, you keep coming back.
The work, yeah. She's a great teacher. She gives excellent feedback. If anybody that watches or listens to this is, looking for a good English teacher at Columbia State Community College,
I give feedback like an editor.
it's so good because like I can slide up my last essay right up next to the one I'm currently writing, and I know exactly what I need to do to make the next one better. And you grade fair. She always goes on about how she's like this harsh grader, but
Maybe
maybe
you're just good, Hallie.
That's a
Maybe the
harsh
rest of us are
grader.
bad.
it's like actually gives good feedback, and I I think you give yourself a little too hard of a time. You make I think you think that you're a meaner teacher than you are.
Well, I've had a lot of students tell me that I'm very harsh on my grading. But in all fairness, too, they're probably the students who don't bother to look at the feedback I give them. But yeah.
What's your when teaching, what's your favorite part of like your curriculums? Like is it like the reading? Is it the writing? Is it like what is it that you like the best?
So in every class I do, even though they're an English class, right? Because I'm a fiction writer, I like to incorporate a creative writing piece. And that is probably my favorite assignment that I do because I have so many students that are like, I can't write like that. But then they come up with some of these really good stories. Um, but beyond that, I honestly love having a discussion-based class because I love getting the students involved in what we're talking about. And even when we go off tangents, and sometimes we go off on tangents that can last the whole class period. Um, but I mean, the literature class this semester, Hallie, has been really good discussion based. The majority of the class jumps in, and I just love that when a class does that. Takes the pressure off me.
Got less stuff to worry about. All
So
right.
I've
I was
been
gonna say, do
thinking,
you guys have any other questions?
if anyone doesn't, I've thought of two because since you're an author, do you base any of your characters off of people you don't like or don't like and haven't liked in the past, or people you do like? We don't have to be all negative, you know.
Yes. There have been characters in my book, good and bad, ones that characters I truly love. I have probably 3 or 4 different books that my grandparents end up in all the time because I was so close with them. Um, and yes, I have people that end up in my books that definitely could be victims because they did not have a good place in my life. So yeah, there's definite, but they're written so typically that person would not know.
I mean, I would assume you would cover it. I just I assume all of these things. I just want to hear it.
You know, every author puts some part of their life in their books. So there's a lot of books especially in my like romantic suspense books, there's a lot of parts of my life that's in them. The first book I ever wrote was about a single mom with an autistic child. And the autistic child was based off my son who has autism. And so, there's just parts of me, I was in an abusive marriage at one point, and so one of my books is centered around domestic violence. So, yeah, authors put a lot of themselves in books.
And thank you for sharing that because that's just really interesting to me. Um, but I was also curious, how did you choose your pen names and specifically to go by two different ones since you, I guess, write in two different genres, so you wanted to separate that?
So technically, I have 3 pen names. So I co-authored some children's books, which are under my maiden name. So they're under Colleen Genest. Um, when I started writing, I was going to write romantic suspense and women's fiction. Lee is actually my middle name. Reed was my mom's maiden name. And then my daughters chose Emma. And then when I decided to go crime thrillers, I didn't want to go totally different, but it's a proven fact that women who write crime thrillers do much better if they use initials instead of a female name. So I shortened Emily Reed to EL Reed.
Okay.
But yeah, that's how, the pen name was mostly just because at the time when I first started writing, I had a friend who was writing under her name, and she wrote thrillers. And someone she knew started stalking her and acting out some of her books. He set fire to her house. And so, because my kids were young at the time, I thought it was kind of important to have a pen name just to kind of protect my family a little bit too.
Wise
Yeah,
decision.
that's very fair.
The world's a very scary place.
It is.
All right. Do we have any other final questions?
Oh, I'm just a little curious about like what romantic suspense is because I don't think I've really heard of that before.
Okay, so romantic suspense is truly a romance. It's in the romance category, but there are suspenseful things in it. It doesn't include murder or anything like that, but there are things, like the domestic violence. She's running from her ex, and so there's just suspenseful things happening, which is why it falls under that category. There's
Interesting.
a subgenres. I'm actually working on a paranormal romance, which is kind of a romance, but it involves ghosts. So that brings in the paranormal aspect of it.
Are there any like we talk about like not romance, but like romance adjacent things on the podcast a lot. So are there like any specific tropes you like to use in your books?
Oh, I don't know if honestly, I don't even think I really think about tropes when I write. They play out in them, because you definitely have, in my women's fiction, there's, unrequited love, there's, friends to lovers, you have those things, but I don't think I intentionally be like, okay, I'm going to write this trope.
Yeah.
But do you have favorite tropes you like to read?
Oh, me? I don't know. I don't think so. But I know
He
other
doesn't
people
want to
do.
say.
Yeah.
We've had some interesting conversation about like in media, some of like the more problematic tropes. Like we've had a couple episodes. One of them we've talked about like there's like in a lot of media like the incest trope. Like that happens like a lot more than you'd expect it to. It's like
More
really
than
they try to like romanticize it in a weird way. Um
we just talked about
Yeah.
like student teacher tropes.
yeah, we talked about student teacher trope. Like there's so many like so like really weird things that like certain like shows and movies and books like will act like it's totally normal and you're like no
It's
this is
not. No, it's
not
not.
right.
But I belong to some writer groups, and the big thing that some writers are going with now, this reverse harem trope, which to me is just weird. But I think the whole harem thing is weird too. But it just seems, I don't know. I think people sometimes just make up their tropes.
True. And some tropes I think are okay
Yeah.
and gets hate for seemingly no reason. Like we had an interesting conversation in our literature class about the trope of orphans. And this one individual in this class really did not like
You
orphans.
didn't like orphans?
No,
Oh, and she came right out and said, "I
Yeah,
do not like orphans."
I hate
think she said,
orphans.
I
Was,
hate
I believe the
orphans.
quote. Yeah,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
in class, we were trying to read Oliver Twist. And just expressed that she did not like orphans. It's like, all right, well,
I think
Why?
talking with her after, though, she should have specified that she doesn't like fictional orphans.
yeah, it's an important distinction to make. But we were all like, oh,
We also had somebody say they didn't like Britain.
yeah,
Or
British
the
people.
They didn't like the British.
That's real. Oh.
So are you endorsing Britain hate? But what
Oh.
about Harry Styles fan fiction, Chloe? What about Harry Styles fan fiction?
That Hardin Scott is not real. So therefore
But if it wasn't
England isn't
Britain,
real.
it can be made up.
We've had some good talks about fan fiction and how everything is kind of like fan fiction. In your books, in a way, is almost like serial killer fan fiction.
Well, see, the new thing is, it's not really new because this is the way people used to write, is serializing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, in writing episodes instead of so much chapters and a novel, but I think that comes back to, this is going to sound terrible, but your generation not having a long attention span.
That's true.
Well, it's true. You guys are used to reading text messages or, short things that you can only have so many characters in. And then so you just want, when you sit down to read fiction, you just want these quick bursts of things instead of sitting and enjoying a good 100,000 word novel.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, our society, everything's go, go, go now, especially in America. There's always something happening. There's usually, you're very rarely in just like a quiet room. There's always like some sort of input, like,
Yeah.
I like to listen to, I hate the sound. I've got like tinnitus, so everything's, if it's quiet, it's just like the screeching. So I've always got like podcast going or music playing, or I'm reading a book or I'm watching a show. And that is really the magic of media. And on that note,
It's a media frenzy, you could say.
what have we learned today, gang? Have we learned anything?
We learned about your professor, Colleen McCready.
Go check out E.L. Reed. The amazing books. With clearly a lot of research being put into them.
We've learned that there's someone who hates orphans out there, but they're not quick to specify if they're fictional or not.
It's true. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for watching. We'll be back again. Will we be back in next week? Yes, we will. We'll be back again next week.
That's our our last episode.
The grand finale.
Thank you so much, Ms. McCready, for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
All right. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.